I understand there's a lot of speakers are going to be talking about a lot of different things, but I'm going to just sort of try give my angle. Um, and I was thinking about this concept of being an influencer and um, who has influenced me in my life and what that has led to. And so if I think about it, really, the idea of an influencer for me is someone who I see as a dugma chaya, someone who's a real living example, someone who, it's very easy to learn about something, but it's a whole different level to actually live it and to experience it and to be really present with it. And if I look through my life, there's really obviously there's different influences as you go through life. Obviously, as growing up, your parents, your family, your community, your friends, that's the major influence on your life. But especially when you're talking about, let's say, spiritual influencer, someone who's going to affect you in terms of helping you in your growth in Torah mitzvahs. There's a few people in my life who had a major effect on me, and I all consider them, real dugma chayas. And so I thought I'd speak about them for a couple of minutes and how they affected me. I'd say uh, uh, the first person in terms of really who was my mashpia and had a real spiritual influence on me was Rebbe Celebransky Oliver Shalom. I'm sure most of you knew him, and I had the chus to learn with him for 25 years, from 1994 when I was in university, till he passed away. And if I can tell a little story, I wasn't really in my 20s. I wasn't so into learning at all, actually. Unfortunately, I was in university studying, and every Friday night he would see me in shul, and he'd come up to me and say, "Josh, you're going to learn this week with me?" And I'd say yes, and I wouldn't go. And then one time I decided, I don't know what happened. He would ask me every week, and I would say I'm going, and I wouldn't go. And then one time I decided to go, and he said to me, "We're learning a maimer." And I said to him, "Okay." I mean, I went to yeshiva college in Melbourne my entire life, but I don't recall learning maimer. I mean, or if we did, I didn't really, you know, didn't concentrate too much on them. And so we started learning a maimer of the Rebbe. We would always learn the Muga Maimorim. And I thought, wow, this is amazing. This is unbelievable. And from that time, I would learn pretty much. I mean, obviously, there were breaks and traveling, etc. But I learned with him once or twice a week for 25 years. And it wasn't just the learning with him; it was everything he did. Like he really, really believed, and it really affected him. And I can tell you that when I would go around the side of his house and I would look into his window, this before, as I was going to the house, as I was outside, and what would he be doing? He'd be learning. Like, he didn't waste a minute. Or sometimes I would go in there and it would be early morning, and he'd open the door. His Rebbe would open the door, and he'd be eating breakfast. But what's he doing during breakfast? He's not reading the newspaper. He's listening to a sikh of the Rebbe or a farbrengen, and it had a big effect on me. And so that, in terms of influence, I think, I understand in today's world there's social media and there's a lot of people who are these influencers, and that obviously they do have a big impact. But I think really it's the people who really live it and they're passionate about it, and people see Emes, people see truth, and people really, you can recognize pretty quickly those people who are genuine. Now, let me just say, I mean, I think, also there are aspects of different people that also have an effect on you. In other words, no one's perfect and everyone has their things, but if you look at people as learning the Rebbe's Torah, you see the Rebbe had an amazing way to look at things positively and he talks about a lot in my mind, the idea of Amech Kulum Sadikim, and all Yidden are filled with mitzvahs like a pomegranate. And there's all this concept of looking at, so you look at someone and they do a positive thing or positive act or do something positive, and I think you should take it for what it is on face value and not overanalyze it, or look at everything else they've done. And there's so many people who come into your life that do things, I'm just thinking out loud, that I see, there's some amazingly generous people that I've seen in Melbourne who have given tzedakah, like really, I don't know, but you could use the word adalayada, but they give it in a very open and generous and kind way. I'm thinking of people like Ronnie Tataka, Oliver Sholem, and other people like that. And that also has an influence on you. All those people who have real ava, and they just are genuinely nice people, and they are just loving and really care. And like we have a rabbi in Melbourne, Moshe Khan, who runs the shul which I daven at Dominion, and he's like all ava, and he really cares about people. And so I think you take different aspects from different people, and they can really be an influence on your life. Another person, I should say, who had a major influence on me, especially over the last few years, and this is something, I know it's a bit of a segue to what I'm going to talk about this concept of being an influencer, is Rabbi Yoni Johnson, who's the Rosh Kollel in Melbourne. And if I could tell another story about what happened with myself, is about 7 or 8 years ago. I have discussed this story before, but I'm going to put it out there anyway. Some of you might have heard it. About 7 or 8 years ago, I attended the Kinus HaShluchim, and I was actually in the Rebbe's room learning with davening in the Rebbe's room on Shabbos morning. I was actually standing next to Rebbe Oliver Sholem, and we ended up between Musaf and Mincha learning the Sikha that the Rebbe said to the Shluchim about learning the Likutei Torah and Torah. And at that time, I didn't really even know what it was. I mean, I knew what it was, but I didn't really understand its importance. And I wasn't I'd learn with Rebbe once a week, or twice a week, but I wasn't really immersed in Chassidus. And so I came back to Melbourne, and I met Rabbi Johnson, and I said to him, could you find someone in the kollel who I can learn with the Chassidus Parsha every day? And he said, well, I'm happy to learn with you. And that has started for me been an amazing journey. For about 2 to 2.5 years, we learned Likutei Torah and Torah every day, and I would say we finished almost all the Maimarim there, maybe except for the ones on Shir Hashirim. And then and then a few other people in Melbourne. We have a chavrusa of 4 or 5 guys, Yichel Belfa, someone called Lawrence Hoffman, and Shneir Lang, Aaron Ellis, a few other people joined us. And about the last 5 years, we've been going through the Rebbe's Maimarim. We started from the beginning, from Tov Shin Aleph, and Baruch Hashem, over the last 5 years, we jump around a bit and from year to year, but we finished all the Maimarim of the Yuds, pretty much all the Maimarim of the Mems, and most of the Maimarim of the early Chofs. And I think of the 1,560 odd Maimarim of the Rebbe, we've learned over 1,000, maybe close to 1,100. And my dream is one day to finish it. And we're also learning Samach Vav. And that has had a major impact on my life on a number of levels. And I really should say a big Yashar Koach publicly to Rabbi Johnson, because it's been amazing. And it's really showed me that the Rebbe, I should say, obviously, it goes without saying, the biggest influencer, spiritual influencer, I assume for all of us, is the Rebbe. And, in terms of a guide and a mentor, a Nossi, a leader, etc., etc. I mean, obviously that goes without saying. But in terms of what I've seen with Chassidus, is that Chassidus is a gift. It's a gift that the Rebbe has given us. Obviously, all the Rebbeim have given us, and it's a lot of people learn a Maimer and they think it's it's a bit esoteric. It's talking about spheres and Olamus, but there are so many Maimarim that, yes, and that's true. Some of them, there's some of the Maimarim, especially in the Yuds and early Chofs, which I found quite difficult, and talking about Yichudei Elon, Yichudei Tata, and Das Elyon, Das Tochta, and it gets, it's really becomes quite challenging. But a lot of Maimarim out there which are very practical and very relevant and help you. And I'm talking about things which are people looking for guidance in, things like simcha, how to be happy. There's a Maimah that the Rebbe said in Margal B'Pumud Tovshim Memvov. I'm traveling now, so I don't have my notes. I take notes in the Maimarim. I don't have them. I'm not at home in Australia, but I'm in a hotel room. But Margal and the Pumandarov, it's about how to have simcha and how to have, what's a perspective of simcha, of thinking positive. And the famous Maimah, which is a Mugimah, how do you deal with thought, speech, and action, and there's other Maimah, even from the early years, Nosat Recha from Tovshin Yud Aleph, I think it is, or Yud Beis, which is expanded in Tovshin Lamed Vav, which talks about this idea of how to deal with challenges, and so there's lots of Maimah and of course many Sichos where the Rebbe has given us this amazing perspective of how to look at things and how to see things from the real perspective. And what that does is it changes, at least what's happened to me, I think, over a longer period of time, it changes how you look at things. And it changes you as a person. And instead of obviously I'm in the world of business, so it's a very materialistic focus a lot of people have in business. But when you start learning the Rebbe's Torah, all the Rebbeim's Torah, you start looking at things more from a spiritual perspective, and your priorities change a bit, and you try to start focusing on, obviously learning, davening, tzedakah, so whatever it is, it really helps you, and it's had a major impact on my life. And so what happened with that is I started doing, together with Rabbi Johnson and someone else in Melbourne called Shlomo Barber, who's also he runs sort of the shul and a lot of the community, a lot of the organizations which are part of the Chabad community, and in Melbourne. And we started doing these learning evenings, and it's really a credit to both of them because they're the ones who've been the real instigator of this. And so we started it before Pesach a few years ago. And we started doing not every Yom Kippur, but like we did one like Go'emer, and then we did Chav Av, and we did Yud Beis Tammuz, and we would have a learning evening, and it started to really take off, and we were getting 150 people, sometimes even more. And then I partnered up with them and Shneur Lang from Melbourne, and we did before Gimel Tammuz 25 years. We did this program where we got different cities around the world to take a year or two of the Rebbe's Maimorim, and Baruch Hashem, we finished all the Rebbe's Maimorim worldwide. We had about 25 cities participate, Melbourne and Sydney, South Africa, in Israel, throughout America, Canada, Argentina. In Asia, we had the Shluchim and some different Shluchim, campus Shluchim, etc. And it was a big success. And then I also worked with Or V'Chom when they learned all the Rebbe's Torah before Yud Shvat Shivim Shona. And we're still doing the learning programs in Melbourne. As a matter of fact, before Yud Aleph Nisan, as a Hachana for 120 years, we had 3 learning evenings. We did one night the Rebbe's Maimorim, one night learning the Rebbe's Sichos, and one night learning the Rebbe's Igros. And Baruch Hashem, we had over 100 people over there, and there's a chayas, there's an excitement and a passion in learning. And so I think, a few key messages. One key message is you have to get passionate. And my passion is really showing people how amazing the Rebbe's Torah is. And I think this is really connected to the idea of Tut Alts and the whole idea of Mashiach. I know, Chav Ches Nisan was a big wake-up call for everyone. And I think Shlomi is really, the guys at Merkaz 302 and Mashiach are really taken to the next level over the last couple of years. And now is the time. And, there's an opportunity here to show not just the Anash and the Chabad world, and not even people who just go to Chabad houses, which is obviously a large number of people. That's one part, but really to even broaden it and to show the wider Jewish world and even the wider world how amazing the Rebbe's Torah is, and how it's really practical and relevant and a real guide for people. And people just need to know. I'll tell you an interesting story happened to me. As I said, I've been traveling, and I did a Pesach program in the Catskills. It's called FFH, big program, like 800 people. It's odd. And they had a big minyan. And so Shvi Pesach, I sit down in my spot, and I'm sitting next to a guy. I say good Shabbos, say good Yontif, it's a Friday. And I notice he's a modern Orthodox guy. He's wearing a kippah guy. He's got a little beard. And I noticed that he's learning a sikha of the Rebbe from Kedoshim. And I see that he's really pondering it, and he's on the same page, and he's like really into it. And so I start talking to him, and I say, before davening, and I say to him, "What's your name?" His name, I think, was Alan Wiener, and he's from, I think it was from Pennsylvania. I can't remember the city in Pennsylvania where you're from. We start talking, and I said, "I see you're learning a sikh of the Rebbe." He goes, "This stuff is amazing. When I get home, I'm going to buy the whole Likutei Sichos." And I was like, "Wow!" And he starts telling me that last year, every week, I assume he goes online and he learns a sikh of the Rebbe. Not just, sometimes it's other things as well, but generally it's a sikh of the Rebbe. And then what he does is he pulls out this book, and every week he makes a 5-page summary of a sikha or what he's learned, but generally it's a sikha, and he sends it to his children and his grandchildren, and then he calls them up and he discusses it with them. And I was really misspelled by this story, because here's a guy, he's not Chabad, he's retired, and he's koching in the Rebbe Sichos, and he's telling his grandchildren about it, and his children, and he's writing books about it. And Baruch Hashem, because I've been learning Maimarim and Sichos for the last 7 odd years, mainly Maimarim. I have to learn more Sichos, but I've been able to pick up, and I can pretty much learn a Maimar by myself. But I've noticed a lot of people, there aren't that many Maimarim of the Rebbe translated. There's, obviously there's the Heritage series by Kos, which is amazing, and there's Simcha Kantor has a website called Simply Chassidus, and there are other places where there are some Maimarim translated, but the vast majority of Maimarim and of Sichos also are not translated. And I know Kos put out an amazing book of the Parashas, and there is Sichos in English, but there's a long way to go. And just like when you start learning, you realize how much you don't know, and you realize that there's a whole world out there of things and every time you learn a Maimar, you pick up something new, or a new concept or idea which you didn't know, or usually many concepts, and when you start learning, you realize how much you don't know. Similarly, there's a whole world of the Rebbes and all the Rebbeim's Torah, and that this needs to be translated, needs to be out there, and needs to be spread to the world. And another thing which I'd just like to add is talking about this. We're talking about Chavches Nissen, and this being sort of like the appropriate time to really spread this globally. I've thought about this idea a lot. Chabad, the system that the Rebbe set up was obviously amazing and genius, and now you have thousands of Chabad houses around the world, and you have an amazing infrastructure, and the reach of Chabad, I think, in terms of Yiddishkeit, must be the biggest in the world. And there's a real opportunity now, because each Chabad house is obviously part of Chabad, but at the same time it's sort of decentralized. Everyone runs their own sort of show, and everyone's busy doing their own pu'ulos. And I must say that when I've had the chus to travel quite a bit pre-COVID. Australia, we were quite locked down for the last 18 months, but or to 2 years. But before that, you talk about influences. Well, you see some of these Chabad houses and these shluchim, and I'm talking about places. I mean, all shluchim, but places where I've been, like places in Asia, like throughout Thailand, Yosef Chaim, Kantor, and places in Africa, and in, like, when I traveled through Ukraine, Baruch Hashem, I was supposed to go twice through Ukraine, and you see the shluchim there, where the Gashmis, they don't have that much, and yet they're passionate, and that also had a major influence on me in seeing these shluchim and what they do, and how their dedication to the Rebbe's mission and vision. But anyway, getting back to this idea, Chabad is a bit decentralized, but at the same time, we have the infrastructure, and we have the Mashiach office, and now is a time where we could unite. I mean, the Rebbe talks about unity, achdus, And obviously that's a key ingredient to Mashiach. And if we could unite together, and we could learn the Rebbe's Torah together and do other pu'ulos together, tzedakah, obviously avodah, davening, whatever it is, goodness and kindness. I know the Rebbe said that to the reporter. Now's the time that we can really, get together and have achdus and unite. And I think, having the Mashiach office there, this is the time, and this is the moment. And I think that we really can make a difference. So we are making a difference, obviously, but we need to come up with some really concrete and firm ideas, goodness and kindness campaigns and learning campaigns, and I think obviously the Rebbe talked about following the famous Sikh of Chavkas Nissen. The Rebbe talked about learning in Yonigul Mashiach. Well, you learn the Maimarim of the Rebbe. It says that Mashiach is going to teach Pnimis HaTorah, and I believe that the Rebbe said in subsequent Sikhos to Chavkas Nissen that part of learning Yonigul Mashiach is learning Pnimis HaTorah. And so I think obviously that's my passion, and if I'm sort of pushing my own boat, so to speak, it would be, now's a great opportunity if we could unite and really get together, and do something really special. So thank you again for this amazing opportunity, and for this big schus, and let's really try and make a difference. Let's bring Mashiach. Thank you very much.